Welcome back to Horrifically Well Read, Bled, and Said. Today we are very excited to be talking to author Drew Starling. Rebecca and I both read one of his books called After, which is a dystopian, apocalyptic alien invader novel that we're very excited to dig into. But welcome, Drew, to the podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Hello, friends. Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
Wonderful.
This has been a book that with After that took me on the most wild, wonderful ride. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And we kind of got introduced through Haley Newland. And I was like, okay, let me hurry up and read this here. I like to try to read everybody before they come on. And I'm kind of angry with you, but
Oh,
also I feel changed through the
Uh-huh.
literature of what I've read. And I'm so glad that you're on here because the work that you're doing, I mean, it was look, I'm your target audience. I like a brutal read.
mm,
And it was brutal, but in the most beautiful and best and heart-wrenching way. And I don't feel like, I've read anything dystopian like this. I'm not a big dystopian reader is what I'm saying, but maybe I am now.
yeah. Yeah.
I think that one of the things I really love in horror and anything sometimes that I'm reading, because I think of even like shows that are like crime shows like The Wire that I love so much. Ones that kind of keep you on edge because you kind of get this feeling very early on that no one is safe at any time. And you definitely
Yeah.
you
Oh
do that
my
really well
God.
in this book.
Well, thank you guys. I'm honored that you described it that way. And yeah, I think a couple things I would just say about it off the top that I think are important to know a little bit behind the scenes is I've written 3 books. My first one took me about a year. My second one took me 90 days. This one took me 2.5 years, and it's less than half the length of either of the first two. It
Yeah.
was really hard to write.
I believe you.
Right. For the reasons that you outlined. I mean, I really wanted to push myself in terms of the prose, the way
Oh,
that the writing, the actual writing style. Not everybody appreciates that. And that's okay. I've accepted it, right? It's some people, listen, not to knock Stephen King, but it's a super easy way to consume literature, right?
Right.
And that's what I chose to not do that. I really look up to authors like Dennis Cooper, who's a sort of transgressive horror author, if you could even call him horror. Cormac McCarthy, even,
the
classic
road. Yeah.
Steinbeck, right. And so for whatever reason, I feel like personally, obviously we like to write the stories that we think we would want to read. And I wanted to write it in a way that I would want to read. And I find the sort of exposition and the more I guess, nuanced writing style to just sometimes feel like a little bit more epic. I think
Mm-hmm.
especially when done through third person omniscient, I really wanted to establish distance from the reader and the
Mm-hmm.
woman and everyone in the novel, right? I wanted it to be like everything is happening over there. And, obviously try to really do a lot of show and not tell anything, which is something that they teach
Yeah.
you in creative writing.
Yeah.
But, the reason that I wanted to make it heart wrenching is because I kind of feel that from a humanistic perspective and a psychological perspective, guilt is it's the emotion that fascinates me the most. And it's something that, I won't go into it, but when I started writing this, my wife and I were going through that emotion together.
Mm.
And I don't know. Like you're an author. It's therapeutic to you in a way to just get some of this out. And I spent a lot of time crying
Yeah.
reading this work and thinking about the woman and making choices with her, right? I wanted to like let her make her choices and do it in a way that didn't wrap anything up in a bow. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling now, but that's sort of
No, you're just touching on everything that I felt it's so beautiful. Like when you say you wrote with the prose, it's it was so good. And Adam and I are sitting here and I was like, why don't we read to each other tonight? Why don't we just take turns reading? Cause we both wanted to read the book and, it's we just soaked it in, it's not something even though it's I think 168 pages or
yeah.
something with After, it's it deserves the respect and it's beautiful. And then so eventually we were like, okay, let's go back to reading solo. And well, because we were both we want to devour this
Yeah.
sort of thing. And I took a screenshot from reading from Kindle Unlimited, but
Yeah.
I was like, this is one of the most beautiful lines. You said, heaven that night poured all of its stars onto a glittering obsidian canvas. And I was just like, that's so beautiful. And the way that you described the stars so many times. And so I just felt like, yes, it comes across as one of these great works of literature, of the writing style that just holds you. I really enjoyed how your main character never gets a name. She's just the woman.
Hmm.
And I want to like touch on that a little bit more of why you made that choice. But also, like, I have read some really messed up books in like literary fiction. And like, just as an example, like that book, like A Little Life, everybody says,
Oh,
like, oh, they sit and cry to it, right? I actually did not cry to that book, but the scenes in this book that you wrote, I did. I mean, I just felt like I was punched several times and just sad. But like, again, like so beautiful how it was written, like the experiences of loss and love and hope and human horrors. I mean, what don't you touch on in here?
Yes, and one thing that really stood out to both of us was the character of the crone. Can you give us any background on where she came from, her inspiration, anything? Because that character just really haunted both of us.
So the crone is, yeah, I obviously wanted to create what I felt was the physical culmination, like, uh, of all of the evil that a single person could embody.
Mm,
Like most of my writing, characters, themes, places are inspired by lots of different things that I've consumed over 41 years now. So the crone is partly inspired by I'm actually not a huge gamer, but the games that I've played I've really loved, and there's a game called Witcher 3,
okay.
which is sort of this medieval RPG that has this incredible story. And there are these characters at one point called the Crones, and they're these witches, right? They're just sort of witches that do these magical spells, and they look kind of funny, but they're not disgusting.
Mm,
And that word kind of really stuck out to me. And I researched the word a little bit more and understood it to mean this sort of evil, sort of female energy that can be physically manifested or not physically manifested. And I thought pairing that idea with this making her almost half mechanized, right? And
right.
having her move towards an alien state herself.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I wanted to do with her, which her dialogue was the most challenging, not emotionally, but like intellectually challenging for me to write,
Mm,
because I wanted her to, like, true evil is not, to me, it's not like mwahaha, like man behind the curtain. It is nuanced.
Mm.
And it is seductive and it is persuasive. I think a lot about, man, I'm really letting my dorkiness show, but in Star Wars, the Sith
Yeah.
and
Okay.
Jedi, right? And the Sith, at least like through Anakin's early experience, the Sith are the ones that are telling him the truth, and the
mm-hmm.
Jedi are lying to him. And of course, the Sith are terribly evil, but they use the truth selectively because they have such a command
God.
over truth and fiction, and they
Yeah.
can just manipulate. And I knew the crone wouldn't work as this, like, why would people flock to this idea, this cult, this woman who looks the way she does and acts the way she does and can't
Yeah.
even do anything herself unless she uses words in a way that's truly unique. And
Mm.
those concepts to sink in. And in that conversation, it reveals some things too about the way that this disaster manifested. And we get the woman's point of view on those things. And, essentially it boils down to there are some that believe that we had the lethal means to take care of the alien invasion problem when it was early. And we did not deploy those means, whether through, and I don't get into this, it could be, maybe the world couldn't come to a single policy recommendation. Maybe they tried and they weren't effective. But either way, that did not happen. And some people believe that we should have. And so, we're in this like conundrum that we face in so many situations in our lives today, our domestic world and our geopolitical world, where there are complex issues that people feel really passionate about. And, like you cannot persuade people out of their point of view.
Nope.
And I wanted to just sort of
More firmly into him.
You
exactly.
do.
That's
Mhm.
kind of where the crone came from, and obviously, like, I wanted to touch on some of the, like,
So I'm sitting
more
here
the
the whole time like, I wonder if he's basing the crone off of, and you're like, it's from Star Wars, and
Yeah.
okay.
like, a little Star Wars, a little these Witcher characters, and then the third one that I'll mention is True Detective season 1, which is just like, I
Oh,
adore it, and I wanted to bring out, that you may remember there was a scene in, I think, midway through that series where the two detectives discover a meth lab, and that's way out in the boonies. And they also make some very grim discoveries about some abuse that's happening there.
Mm.
And I frankly, like, I wanted to draw some of that into, because I remember watching that and feeling like, wow, that really captured the deepest, darkest, like, they really captured that well. So I was hoping to infuse a little bit of that
mhm.
in the setting that this
Mm.
Sith, like, what if the scene from True Detective Meth Lab, like, what if it's being run by a little Sith Lord hybrid human alien? So I don't know. That's kind of where it all came together.
What's his name? Jabba the Hutt? Is that the
From yeah.
Oh yeah, Jabba the Hutt for sure.
like? I
Yeah,
feel like yeah, where it's like that's like the like the way that the crones kind of describe, but
right.
like way more evil. And I
Yeah,
love how you're saying like infusing truth. We've talked about that in a couple episodes of
Mhm.
people that are, chronically dishonest, that, or chronically unapproachable, which is like you can trust that. But I love this aspect of how they're blending enough truth. So it's a different way to be hoodwinked or completely manipulated. Um, through doses of the truth that are, or
yeah,
like feel right, but then the rest of the things don't. So it's like a bending and a blending of reality.
yeah. And I'm hopeful that at that point, that's about midway through the book, we've established the woman, the main character, as someone who it's believable that she's going through some serious denial in her life.
Oh yeah.
And sure, like, she could be, she's letting this guilt rip her apart. She's not living a full life. Even later in the novel, she takes some really sort of psychologically questionable steps towards recreating her family experience.
Yeah.
So there's hopefully some unreliability, even though she's so physically capable and so
Yes.
sharp, such a survivalist. She's just completely a mess on the inside.
Yeah. I got to that part and I was like, this is appropriate. I mean, if you've lived in this
It's a good
world,
breakdown that you're kind
yeah,
of reading as it goes through, and then you're like,
I
honestly,
get
I'm
it.
surprised it didn't happen earlier.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
she's got to find a little bit of comfort
Hmm.
somehow.
I felt so funny about this, and it was Austrian again who pushed me over the edge. But one of the choices I made, which I'm sure will come off as like pretentious, is there's a subtitle for this book. I don't know if you even noticed. I don't even really use it. It's on the cover, it's
Yeah.
official, but
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
there's a subtitle which is after, it's like the anatomy of fracture. That's what I put that in there because I wanted to make sure this story, when it was being marketed and being consumed, was not about the aliens. It is an anatomy of an internal human psychological fracture. And this is how I would imagine. I've never gone through it to that level, but these were the choices that I
Mm-hmm.
thought would make sense for someone going through that
Mm-hmm.
in that situation over the course of a year. The ending was something too that there were 3 different endings, like, as there are with everything, right? And I wanted to do what I thought was the most authentic choice to her, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I won't go into detail, but guilt is not something, as every human knows and will experience, it is not something that just goes away
Right.
and just stops. It is something that I was listening to a interesting interview with Billy Bob Thornton the other day, of
Mm.
all people, talking about how his brother died, and at a very early age. And I don't remember the words that he used here, but he kind of very succinctly just described this guilt that, like, oh yeah, I think about it I am always thinking about it. It is always in the back of my mind. It is always in the back of my mind. And that was 35 years ago. And for her, again, I won't go into detail, but I think a beautiful, happy little ending, like maybe it was implied that we were going in that direction, was never going to work for her.
Sure.
Hmm.
And I don't know.
Well, it's almost like grief is its own little invasion that never
Sure.
leaves, like you. So just to be really clear to our listeners, like, this is not an alien book at all. Like, it happens to be the setting and like it jumps
Yeah.
things off, but this could have been natural disaster. It could have been a plague. I mean, it could have been lots of things that leave these characters where they're at, where it's a very, very different world, lots of death, and they're trying to survive, right? So it's like a apocalyptic afterwards of that and survival. But you talk a lot about these discs being in the sky and just kind of always being there. And that's kind of the relationship with grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
they're just
No matter
always
where yeah,
hovering.
I love
Yeah.
that. It says no matter where you're at, you can always at least see one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's definitely like
A-
that
And
thing.
sometimes the discs are quiet, sometimes the discs are screaming, and I guess that
Yeah.
kind of ebbs and flows with intensity of how your grief is feeling that day.
Yeah. And, the woman, again, like the story very closely tracks a single character. It's a linear timeline. And at towards the end, we discuss some sort of resolution to that physical situation.
Right.
And she does take some steps to resolve her psychological situation and comes to some resolution there. But that's just not how it works.
Right.
And that's where I'm trying to really sort of the maybe the most harsh dichotomy is in that end when the physical world, that situation is moving in one direction, and then her own psychological, emotional
Hmm.
resolution is moving towards a different end, and they're
Right.
at different places, right? And again, I think that was where, coming back to when we came out of the COVID thing,
Hmm.
so much grief, and it was like, well, I'm just not in the mood to be happy, and I don't know how to be happy.
Right.
Maybe I forgot how to go outside, and it's scary.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the woman. Like, well, maybe I've forgotten how to live with people.
Sure.
Maybe I've forgotten how to be happy, and I'm going to take this at my own pace and listen to myself and listen to my body and my heart, and I will do what I need to do, and hopefully I'll figure it out when I'm ready, but I'm not ready. I know I'm not ready. Like, she has a physical reaction to trying out this new way of life. And it immediately, everything in her, externally, internally, is telling her, hey, don't do
Yeah.
this. Maybe
Well,
she goes back. I don't know, but
I mean, so during this time, I'm working remotely as like a sales manager, and we see a lot of customers and clients. And I remember getting enrolled into this particular coaching program with a bunch of like corporate women, whatever. And we were all
mm,
like willing to be very authentic. So this would have been like 2021, 2022. And we were just like, as you're talking about this, it makes me think back to this conversation where we were saying, like, we're so like the noise of society is so
yeah,
garish now. Like, it hurts to be like, we can't even imagine going back into the office because of the amount of noise and people to be around. It's like, how do you do that again? And then we were saying, like, when it, so then I guess it would have been like 2022 that we're going through. And it's like, okay, people are having birthday parties and things again. It's like,
yes,
it was like we were talking about, like, it was painful. Like, how do you just rub against this much energy and people again? And, it was like you want to because you're a social person and you're used to being around people and you built your business and your lifestyle and everything around, but you're so used to just seeing people on a screen and turning it off. You're not having these social experiences, and yet you're designed to have them, but it feels so foreign. And that was in such a short amount of time. And I'm thinking about the woman and how long she was just so self-sufficient and how much it must have been painful to her, and
yeah,
that threat, that isolation, and the way that you learn to just like cope. And it felt like even during COVID, it was like, well, what's the point of buying this dress? What's the point of buying these shoes? Where am I wearing it? Where am I going? Like, when is this ever ending? And I
yeah,
mean, it's like, it's got to change at some point, right? And I mean, but in the book here, it's like, there's no guarantee. You didn't know
right,
what was going to happen or when it's going to go. And I mean, over a decade, it's a pretty long time. And
yeah,
within there, I feel like it kind of paralleled for me. I remember very early on in COVID that it was somebody on the right side was like, well,
hmm,
we should just basically let all the grandparents die.
yeah,
And
right,
I was like, what? Like, yeah, like, we should just have these older people, like, like if they die, if they and I was like, is this like real fucking life here. And
Yeah.
do you know which part I'm talking about?
That
That
that whole
governor or
that
whatever.
thing where it was like that idea that when we've reached this sort of level that enough people have been exposed that we'd have that like communal protectiveness from it. So just allow the ones that are going to get weeded out to get weeded out so that we reach it faster,
Yeah,
essentially.
and I
Yeah.
was just like, "What?" And, that's
I mean,
when I
people are still making that. Like I heard, not to get into this, but a kind of far right influencer was like, "I don't understand healthcare. Like, why let those people die?" You
yes.
know, so that's not a that is not gone.
No, and
That's a
I was just like, "How?" And that kinda makes me think of, like, the way you're describing, like, the crone and the
yeah.
attitudes there
Oh
where it
yeah.
was just like, "Okay, we've lost our humanity now.
Right.
Like, how are we even making decisions like this?"
Yeah. Yeah, and but everything is nuanced. Everything is complicated. Time heals, and it's like, what is that silly saying?
Yeah, time heals all wounds.
Yeah. And there at the same time, I wanted to show that there are some positives and the woman makes some real progress.
Yep.
And she obviously hits. I mean, if you can think of a more bottom point than I wrote, I would
Yeah.
love to hear it.
No, you captured it.
Yeah.
Hits rock bottom,
Yeah.
right? She
Yeah.
really hits bottom. And but then she comes out of it a little bit and she rediscovers things like,
Well, Regis
just
is
the
a good friend to her. I mean, thank God.
people care. And the act of, picking up her mechanic, like you can just get lost in a project for
Yeah.
days.
Yep.
Great thing, and so she's rediscovering these things slowly. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I tried to pray for my deceased children,
Mm.
and I know what it's like, and it didn't work for me, but having these pieces of them does work for me,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And I can also retreat into my work, and I can remember that I have friends, and I can go see them when I want to see them, and they want to see me, and I don't need to change who I am and disrupt the pace of my grieving. But I just need to know, I need to listen to myself and I need to know what those signals are like. And she's, when you're at that rock bottom, you're not in tune with your own signals, right?
Right. Sure.
You're not listening to your friends, your family, yourself, your body. Your mind is really in a twisted place. And it's not like it just snaps back into a
Right.
wire. It takes some untangling, and that's what she's doing. And so, she's this tangled mess, and then hopefully, like, it's starting to untangle a little bit, and I wanted to stop it there, right? Because I wanted to make sure that we could envision any future for her. I personally, and this is just me, I have a pretty hopeful future for her, as obviously the world is sort of trending back towards normality. I mean, I guess you could say that, but I think you can tell your own story there, and those evil forces aren't going to go away. I'll tell you another quick thing that a friend of mine, Ross Jeffrey, who's a fantastic author, he is probably the best at writing grief that I've ever read. And he read an early copy of this, and I will reveal to you that the original draft of the story had the crone perishing at some point.
Oh,
And
okay.
hopefully, I don't know if it was clear or not, but and then I asked my publisher, is like, do you agree with this? And they're like, yeah, leave that out there. Like, these forces are not, there's no panacea to these things. Don't make it look like the worst threat that was in this thing is totally dead. And,
Uh-huh.
from a marketing standpoint, maybe that sets up a sequel, which I'm actually really not interested in writing. I kind of want to just leave it alone. But
Yeah.
I think it was an interesting point, and I wonder if you guys have a point of view on that. I was actually going to kill the crone, and then I decided, I think you're right. It would be more true to the story, and again, the anatomy of the woman who's still in this complex place, the world in this complex place. I don't want to project any degree of finality over that force. You know what I mean?
So what's your point of view?
Well, I think that, you have personified a really sort of gross, mean base thing that almost all people can have tapped into them if they're pushed to a certain limit, right? And so I think that, the crone, whether alive or dead, and, the fact is that even as it's written, it kind of say this without like saying what happens at the end that lets you know that that might be still out there. But I think that the point is that, like, whether it is specifically this crone, there is a crone out there at all times. And I love the
It's
fact that, this one may still be out there and still trying to get, to rally a new army around her and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that is perfect for this because that other threat is still around. It is still a new world, and it is
Yes.
still who's going to
Yeah.
have the power. How is the
Yes.
power going to be structured? And a force like the Crone or someone like the Crone is always going to want as much of that power as possible.
It's less of, to me, about the person that was the crone and more the ideology
Hmm.
that now began and was birthed. And I think
Yeah.
like someone's always going to take that spot. So yeah,
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah.
I have not read your friend's book on grief, but uh, I think that he has some competition because you do. This is, I mean, I can't state enough about how beautiful and harrowing this book is at the same time. It just, you play with so much. And I really wanted to touch on at the beginning of the book when she's with the character Elijah.
Yes.
That was one of the most evocative scenes. And it's like watching him have this grief filled, almost anxiety, panic attack breakdown of just love pouring out. And you wrote that so beautifully. And that was like, okay, how do I feel like I have not spent this much time with this character, Elijah, and I've never met his partner, but suddenly I love these characters and I want nothing but the best and I'm hurting for him so much. And you're very good at what you do.
Thanks. Well, yeah, and like, I think that Elijah, there's another character that we don't meet named Michaela and Janice, who we read about through messages.
Hmm.
And, I wanted to very early on establish the contrast between the woman's stoicism and the choice that she makes to deny the I feel comfortable using that strong of a word, the denial that she goes through versus people who are very open about this and open about their loss. And, like, Elijah's a crier.
Yeah.
The woman's not a crier.
Hmm.
Harder for her to get these things out. And obviously it is hard for Elijah as well. He is just he's on the verge. I mean, he's been ready for a long time, right? And
Yeah.
Michaela, they're comfortable putting their feelings into these little notes that who knows what's going to happen to them. And I'm glad to know I didn't go a little overboard with them and with Elijah, because I just wanted to establish that contrast, because while it may have been cathartic, even for the reader at that point, to experience a character dealing with their grief and getting it out, at least somewhat, and then coming to their own resolution the way they, on their terms, for better or worse. The woman, you know, through it all is an observer, and we don't really get her reaction to that in an explicit way. And I think part of the reason I wanted to have those characters, especially Elijah, early, was to establish that. You know what I mean?
And she just moves on from things, like not just like when you're saying like stages of grief, like denial, shock, anger, sadness, acceptance. It's like she lives between denial and shock, like all the time. And like the middle of the book where she's exiting the mall and
Oh,
something horrific happens and she's just like,
okay.
fuck. And then
Yep.
like,
It's almost like
that's
an
kind of it.
course.
Yeah.
Like, I think that all of these things up to a certain point in the book are just reinforcing like this viewpoint that she's created, that like you can't hold on to, or
Anything.
expect anything except your own survival, and like it just keeps getting reinforced over and over again any moment that she thinks she might have something to care about.
It's almost like scenes of The Walking Dead where you're like, you're not going to kill that character, are you? And it's like, oh yeah, we are. And you're
Yeah.
going to freaking feel it. And it's
Mhm.
like, that's what you did in this scene here. And you're just like, and she's got no time to mourn. It's like, I just gotta
If she's
go.
gonna live, she has to
Yeah, it's
keep
just, I
moving.
gotta
Yeah.
go.
And,
And what they get killed over, or
Yeah.
like,
uh-huh.
just like, it's like the guilt that I was imagining in my head. Like, what if they just didn't go in to the mall to get a coat?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
a coat. It was a coat. It was just like,
But at the same time, where they're at, if you don't have that coat,
you're gonna
it's a
die.
slow death.
That's what I'm saying. And it's just like the guilt between, I was just
Mhm.
trying to be kind. And it's just, you're at this level of,
Yeah.
you're rude,
You
sir.
know,
You're rude.
I believe it or not, there's a little bit, this is, I'm not going to mention any names, but I work in a very intense professional field, and I worked with someone who was really just sort of the whipping boy at this company. And he was one of the C-suite leaders, but at the same time, I just watched him get pounded and pounded and pounded and pounded. And, in my own mind, I'm like, well, if I was in your position, I would have just quit long ago. And there was a little bit of I think of him, I hate to say it, a little bit when I think of that scene specifically, because what this guy taught me, and I have a lot of respect for him. He taught me and showed me that for better or worse, human psyche can take a lot.
Hmm.
And, like there were situations where I watched him go through and I was like, well, surely this is the end. And nope, I'm just going to keep showing up and I'm just going to keep going. And yeah, I mean, it did hit me. Like, that is the worst. You're right. That's the worst thing that could have happened to me. Right. But I'm still alive. I can get out of here. Right. It's like with this guy, it's like, well, I'm not fired. I can stay here. And I know this is such a weird way of looking at that. It's what the woman goes through is such a severe example of things that we go through in our daily lives all the time and maybe don't even notice it. Or maybe when it is heightened, it doesn't feel like a life and death situation. Maybe it is our workplace. And it's like, well, what is my limit? What is my breaking point?
I'm gonna
What
say
does a
this to
breaking
you,
look like?
Drew, off the record. I'm gonna have Adam edit this, but like what you're describing was literally my most recent corporate life. Like
Yeah.
the situation changed. Like I went from the
Most
most
supportable, yeah.
supportive, like wonderful management regime, and then it shifted after
Yes.
they did a whole restructuring, and then it just came in like with a severe, and I went from being like the most beloved, I was the rising star, I couldn't do anything wrong, like it was like everything I did was like gold, and it was like weird because I'd never had that experience before, to the regime change, and I became the whipping boy. And when you're saying like the amount that the human psyche can take, like I got my first 2 tattoos, I cut my hair like super short because like I wanted to cut out all the like trauma that I felt like was in it. And just, I mean, I was like, I'm hanging in here. And every time that they thought that they were going to make me quit. So I'm like really relating to this. And then eventually, like 2.5 years later, they have another restructure. So it was like able to work
You
it
got
out
through it?
that way. And I'm like I'm almost like 6 weeks away till the end of my like severance and starting to look for work now. But I gotta
Okay.
tell you, like, I am proud of myself for hanging in there and not just being like, when
Yeah.
you say there's a lot that the human psyche can take. And it was like, I stood up for a lot of people and it was hard and it was brutal, but I'm glad I did it, but I don't want to live it again.
You've got to find ways to take pride. And I don't know how this guy that I mentioned, I don't know how he did it, but he has now negotiated a graceful exit for himself. The woman, the only thing she ever voices pride over is at one point when she is at that rock bottom, she says, I never let those fuckers get me.
Yeah.
And she's
Yes,
proud of
she
that.
did.
And
She did. She's like,
so
I never let those fuckers get me.
I honestly thought about having that be, that was the core thing I wanted to express in that particular scene. And, then I dressed it up with some more dialogue and, some apparitions and
Wow.
stuff.
My
That was,
God. I'm so glad we're talking because like I'm reading this book as it is here, but like I didn't see the COVID aspect, but like, okay, but now when you're explaining it to like, this could be your marriage that was excellent. And then there's some kind of like, I don't know, car accident or something and the behavior changes and life changes, or it could be like you said, like a toxic workplace or something like that, where all of a sudden it just shifts and you're living in this entirely different world. And how do you exist and survive and just like hold on to what the human psyche can take? Like this book has a lot of lessons to it. Like I feel like I could go back and reread it and look at it in a different light now. Like, whoa, you taught a lot.
well, and that's just to zoom out a little bit, that this is why I love horror. Because how many books are out there about heartbreak and loss and self-help and, nonfiction, fiction. I mean, I don't really read those books. I'm not interested in them because to me, what you just said is like I wrote about some things that are very real in my life and in people around me. My wife, like I said, like my family was going through some really tough times, but like I'm not going to write a story about that. What I'm going to do is create an avenue that's more creative. And again, like a little bit on my terms. Remember that? Like Elijah, like I'm doing this on my terms.
Yeah.
A woman, I'm doing this on my terms. And like horror to me is just a great way for me to express those things, for people like readers to consume those things. And at the same time, like I think I'm confident enough in my writing that I'm totally happy with people that do or don't pick up on anything, right? I mean, you should have your own interpretation of those things. Maybe you a very different viewpoint on the crone, or what happens to the woman, or Regis's offer, or like I don't have the answers to those things, right? And that's the beauty of horror, is that it is, you present these things in a sort of fantastic way, right? Like cannibalism or, aliens, right? Like it allows you and it allows me both to experience and grapple with our complex emotions that are just so like wrapped around the axle of the real world, that to like take a step back, look at it through a different lens can be helpful. And I mean, I don't have to tell either of you about the therapeutic power of horror.
Hmm.
If I made people cry with this book, like I that's like the biggest honor I could have. I mean, just getting some kind of emotion out, like that's why this horror genre is inherently a good thing. People, it has this perception of scary and slasher, and like that stuff's fun too. And by the way, my next book isn't, it's going to be pretty lighthearted, right? Like, but it has the power to really cleanse. And that's just, man, that's just why I love it.
I think that's fascinating too. We've talked a lot about how horror is like the genre that exposes things, looks at things, honestly. Um, and one of the things we talked about a lot is kind of holding up a mirror to things. And I think, like, as a writer, as you're writing it, you're probably looking at it and thinking of it as holding a mirror to whatever it is that you're kind of putting of yourself into it. But then once that book is out there, someone else is holding that mirror and they're saying something completely different. And as long as you were kind of telling the truth in the way that you wrote, they're going to get something out of it that really helps them in wherever they're at. And I think that, you
Yeah.
that's just a really beautiful thing. And I think that is why, I have always loved horror so much.
Still continue, excuse me, I still continue to just be impressed by the amount of healing that a horror writer gives to its audience. And because I did not grow up on horror, I didn't see it in that way. And now that I'm exposed in this level and I'm reading these kind of things, it's like, how can I ever go back? Like, this is the genre that explores everything that I've been passionate about, from psychology and sociology and human nature. And it's the no holds barred, right? Like it can get as messy and as deep and as real and not sugarcoated at all. And sometimes it's like you just want someone to be authentic with you and real, of like, no, this is the real experience. And I think that was like, I referenced Elijah's reaction, but it's like there was a scene in a movie years ago, and I won't like go into the whole detail of it, but this woman, like, she's just like, she starts like telling a story, she starts crying, then she's like starts hyperventilating, and it's like where she can't even like get the cries
Oh
in.
yeah.
And I was going through something at that time, and it just connected with me in a way that, like, that scene ripped it open and finally allowed me to be able to cry. And I feel like when someone reads this scene in the book here, several scenes, that you're like, it touches something that maybe you can't touch any other way unless you're reading something like what you wrote. But it needs to be exposed. Like it's like almost like, gosh, I'm sorry, something gross comes to my mind, but kind of like, like maybe
No.
it's like something that, needs to just be popped, and, it's
Yeah.
like under the surface, like a little bit. And you're just like, okay, the reading this helps to like pop it and squeeze it so that it can like form a
Yeah.
proper scab. Like that's where my head goes, but it's like it's festering, right? You don't realize it because it's like under the surface a little bit. And reading something like this, you're like, well, shit, I didn't know I was even feeling this way about that or felt this. And yet now I can go on and heal a bit more.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we watch her go through over the course of, 160 pages. It's just watching someone else go through that, for sure. I mean, I remember there was a movie called Mystic River. I
Yeah.
didn't read the book, was a book, and Sean Penn, who I think is just such a fantastic actor. His daughter is murdered in this movie, and he has this scene where he's like grieving, he can't cry. And he's like, he looks like he's crying, but there's no tears coming
Right.
out. And it's, oh, I've never seen anything like that. I was like, so yeah, like the bounds, like the rawness hits people in different ways. And time moves on, and, things get a little more evened out, but never completely even.
Yeah.
And, I'll be honest with you guys, I went through my own grieving process with this novel recently because I always honestly envisioned the primary medium for this story to be audio.
Mm.
And I wrote the book, obviously, because that's the genre, that's the medium I'm comfortable expressing thoughts through. But we just finished wrapping the audiobook recording, and we got this woman, this fantastic woman named Renee.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And she finished the book, and I obviously listened to it, and I found myself, I actually have a TikTok about this, of all things, TikTok,
Okay.
where I'm like getting emotional listening to the last chapter of the last, you know, audio file, because I was like, okay, I have seen this project through fully to its creative completion. And
What a
I now,
feeling. Wow.
right, like now, right, she's out there, she's spreading her wings and she's gone, right? Like,
Wow.
I can't do anything else with it now. Like, it is what it is.
Well, we
And
could
so,
talk about movie or series because it was incredibly cinematic.
yeah, I mean, I don't really,
I'm not gonna
I
just
don't,
like put that against you to have to live to that because I mean the audio I'm sure is going to be fabulous, but like I mean, I could see this. I mean, this world, I mean, I don't know how in 168 pages it feels more like 500-page book,
in
like
terms of
in
world.
terms of the world that you create, like it's crazy.
yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah, I
that's,
mean, there's material there for sure.
I mean, that's the writing style. I wanted it to be, even though there is like a lot of exposition, the action is very quick. Like, you could argue almost too quick in some places, right? Like,
No,
days go by in a paragraph, right? So I wanted to just keep it constantly moving, constantly moving, constantly moving.
yeah, it's an enjoyable read. I always say that like I have to play games with myself. Like every single book I begin to read, I'm like, let me just get to the first 25 pages and like then the 50. And I can always tell when like it's a really good book because I'm like, I don't have to play that game. And that was with
Right.
yours for sure. It was just like you're
Good.
immediately brought in and you're just like, and like I said, like this isn't like I feel so grateful that we were introduced because I think that, one of the things for this goal of this podcast is to be introduced to different types of horror and whether that's labeled as literary fiction and it should be horror or, just within the horror subgenre that you think, oh, I wouldn't normally touch this. And so, like I said, I wouldn't have normally, picked up something dystopian, but I'm
Yeah.
walking away with saying like, these characters will live in my heart. I will think of these scenes. I'm better for having read this book. And I hope other people will give this a try, if that's not something that they typically read, because like you said, it's not aliens. It is a full examination of the human behavior and life and grief. And, I mean, you really killed it.
Thank you. I mean, I didn't know if it was going to work. Honestly, I didn't think people were going to like this because it was, too expositional, and the writing styles too, much nature, this and that. And I really mean it when I say that, because like you said, this is not written to market. My first two books are very much written to market, right? My next book, very much written to market. Like, color within the lines and you'll sell 1,000 copies, 5,000 copies. You know what I mean?
Mm,
This is not that at all. And I was like, Rick Rubin has some really great YouTube clips about like the best art is art that you create for yourself. And if anybody else likes it, that's fine. And that is this. This I created for myself. And I wrote it for myself, and I dedicated it to a friend who took his life at a young age that never, I'm still not over that. And I dedicated it to my wife who, like I said, we've gone through so much together. But from a writing standpoint, like, I was like, I know that this is not common and people may not like it, but I'm just going to put it out there anyway. And I was so honored that Ross, who I just deeply respect, loved it as much as he did. I knew that this was going to work when there's a reviewer that I have an immense respect for. His name's Paul Preston. He's active on Instagram, and he absolutely loved it. And I was like, oh my God, did this really work?
Hmm.
Is it actually going to resonate? Because it was so personal to me. I didn't know, right? There's no plot, basically. I mean, it was a big question mark, and I still continue to be just tickled and delighted that it worked with people. I mean, it kind of shocks me, honestly, because it was so personal.
I mean, I think that, the most personal and like honest, and when you can feel that, a lot of times that does resonate and
Yeah,
connect with readers. And I'm so happy that you're seeing that with this. And there the other style, like when you're saying you wrote to market and all that kind of stuff, that's great too. And people do
yeah,
resonate with that, and that's fun and that kind of stuff. But being able to mix in, something that is so much more personal, and that I think is kind of what keeps an artist going.
Yeah, and you were saying earlier when we were talking with George from George Reads that it's like y'all like to get into some heavy shit, and
Hmm.
then you're like, okay, I'll take more of a kind of a palate cleanser, which is not really
right.
in the horror genre, but
Yeah. As
yes,
a reader, I guess a writer needs to do the same thing.
yeah,
So,
and so that's how I see it. But it's like, yeah, I mean, this is
Yeah,
a book that when you're in the mood for something like this, like it is terrific. It really
yeah,
is terrific. And, Adam and I both feel really passionate about, like, if we only want to talk like with people that we really believe in their work, and really only want to like, we're not interested in having bad reviews like that, we don't want to put people down and things like that. But like when we say we like something, it's one of the things where it's just like there's a whole lot of books in this world to read and a
I
lot
know.
of garner for attention. And it's like your book deserves to be read. It's really good.
I'm so thankful for like this little horror community that we have on I mean, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, like I said, and it took me a couple of years to find my footing with that. And it's a small, as you guys know, it's a tight knit community. People look at us funny from the outside. And, I'm just so happy that it resonated with those people. I tell my real life friends, like, I don't tell them to read, few of them have, but I don't tell them about it. Like, it's like, I don't try to, if, you know what I mean? It's
Like, are
not
they going to
something,
get it?
no, and I don't want them to I don't want, that's not what I want either. I don't want them to do that. I will say though, that my dad, who is like one of these, traditional old school baby boomer gentlemen,
Go
who's
on.
a
Yes, I hear you.
voracious reader, we don't talk about emotional stuff, and he has never read anything, because he's like, "It's too scary, I can't do that," and I haven't pushed him, and I said, "Dad, I would love for you to just try this one," and he loved it, and
oh, that's awesome.
of course, he gave me notes, which I didn't take any of them,
I
but
love that.
yeah, it's like,
That's a skill in of itself there, Drew.
it's not one of these relationships where I pine over, like, we love each other. It's great. It's fantastic. But I haven't pushed it on him. I haven't pushed it on anybody, but to hear him say like that this was really well done, and he really liked the writing style, and he like, like you, he pointed out a couple, like he loved the beginning of part 3, where I sort of start out and like I play around with first person a little bit
Hmm.
and start at the top of the mountain and then go down through the valley. He liked that a lot. And so I was happy that I made him happy.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, like the resourcefulness that this woman has for like cleaning her bike and, irrigation and doing vegetables and all these things. It's made me like panic again to be like, I don't have any of these skills or I need to improve upon them. And like,
Right.
like it definitely puts that back into the focus again of being like, son of a bitch,
Yeah.
just are you
It's
prepared?
good to know how to change a tire. It's really good to know
Yeah.
that.
I'm not gonna lie, if these specific aliens came, I'd be like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we didn't even touch about that. I mean, like the way that these particular aliens look, the
Oh, yeah.
description, the
Yeah.
speed,
I
like
love the way that
oh
the crone reflects the aliens that are inside the discs, and
Yeah.
yeah, and sort of like these ones inside the discs aren't doing the dirty work, but kind of
Right.
control everything, and she's kind of the same thing on Earth,
yeah,
was
but
very
like
cool.
you're these alien like the flaps and like
Hmm.
the way that the sound, like I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm like I'm seeing this as very. I can't wait to hear the audio part for this. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so obviously the book is available now. You said you have
Yep.
2 other books that are also available now, that's right? Is there a time frame on the audiobook's release?
I don't know. We're fighting with Audible because it's very picky about the files and codecs and things that I don't understand. So it's recorded. I think what I might do is I have really had stage fright in this world I mean, it's funny because I don't really in any other aspect of my life. I've never done anything in person in the horror community after 7 years of being in it.
Hmm.
And I'm going to my first in-person conferences. I'm going to be going to Horror Reader Weekend
Hey, we'll be
in,
there.
We'll see you there.
okay, great.
So you have an immediate friend set.
God. LP Hernandez is going. I'm like, I'm just gonna have to hang out with you because I don't know anybody. And then obviously Christine she loved the book and she's like, you have to come.
Yeah, she's
So
awesome.
I'm doing that. And I'm doing DreadCon in Canada, which
Oh,
because my publisher is Canadian, Erie River Publishing. I've been with her from the start, my only publisher,
nice.
and she's put on this conference DreadCon in September. And I think maybe it might make sense to release it around one of those conferences.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we'll see. I don't know. I'm not incredibly eager. We just had a BookBub promotion, which along with some other promotion tactics, like got it up to I think it was in the top 1,000 in the Kindle store.
Ooh,
It was number one in a couple of categories on Amazon. So it has gotten a nice level of exposure so far. And I really want people to check out this audiobook when it's ready because I continue to think that this is the way the story was meant to be consumed. But obviously, to each their own.
yeah. Well, that's very exciting. Where can we find you on TikTok and Instagram? What's your handle so that people can find it so they can hear when this is going to happen?
Sure. So I'm Scary Starling on TikTok and Instagram. And drewstarling.com is my website, which I don't update very often, but really Instagram and TikTok are the way.
I like the Scary Starling. That's a great name.
Thank you. I came up with
Yes.
it. Yeah, I didn't think of it.
Well, it's
Yeah.
been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you at Horror Reader
Yeah,
Weekend. And please come back on whenever and keep spreading this good work.
absolutely. I am so honored you guys had me on, and I'm even more honored that there are real people with whom this story resonated. So
Well,
thank you.
absolutely. Then there's going to be a whole lot more, I promise you. So
Yes.
thank you very much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Drew.
Bye.